who wants to share what that was like?
May I share?
Go ahead.
Uh, we found one interesting thing when about my story. Um, I didn't pay attention to the word that I think that I am lazy person. I'm not completely sure if I have sign that I really need to stop and relax, or I am just a lazy person. And I didn't pay attention to this word lazy. And I get a suggestion, great suggestion, to make tapping meditation with this word, with these feelings of laziness. And I will really do, because I feel some negative emotions about this inside, but I really don't know where are they from. And it's an interesting explore. So it's interesting object to explore for me. It's something new. I think that by myself, I wouldn't pay attention to this word, to this
Yeah,
word.
yeah.
And
So so lazy, like, is that a fact or is that an
it's
opinion?
my opinion. It's not fact, it's my
Yeah,
opinion.
that's right. It's an opinion. Um, so now that you know that it's an opinion, how does that change your story?
My opinion. It's my
That
opinion.
means it's like crossed out, presumably, right? It's not in the story anymore because it's not circled if it's your opinion. How does that change the story?
uh, so this sentence was, I want to believe that I'm doing right, listening to my inner guidance, to stop, that I'm not just a lazy person. And if I will cut this word lazy, it will be that I am just a person. I'm just a
Different
person.
energy, right? It's a different energy.
Yes.
So, so thank you for sharing that. Um, just kind of a show of hands. Who had sort of a little bit of a revelation around, you can raise your hand, you don't have to if you didn't, around when you cut out all the not facts? Just a little bit. Any sort of like, oh, that's interesting. Some of you not so much. Okay. So now that you have the story without the, well, anybody else want to share what came up really quickly? Can do one more. Anyone? Okay, go ahead.
This is pretty basic, but when Kim, Jamie, and I were both going through our
Is
story,
basic a fact or is it an opinion?
it's an opinion. I stand corrected. When Kim, Jamie, and I were sharing our stories, both of us noticed that when we focused on the facts, the story became much, much more condensed. There
Yeah.
was not a lot of there was not a lot to the story anymore.
Yeah. So that's a good point. Thank you. So who found that the energy had, or the story had less energy and power when you told it without the extra stuff? Raise your hand. It had less energy and power.
I did. I noticed I created everything in my head.
Well, maybe. Yeah, maybe. So this is good information. We're just gathering information right now. Um, and for some people this is very, this will like frustrate you, right? Like this exercise, because there's maybe a situation where there's a lot of energy, and then to take out the stuff that's not facts, it's like, yeah, still has energy. I don't want to take out the facts because, or the opinions and the other stuff, because that informs the story, right? um, so here's what we're going to do next. Take your story, sorry, take just the parts that are circled, the facts, and you may need a separate piece of paper for this. You're going to take your story and, using just the parts in the circles, you're going to write a new story, and this story is going to be a tragedy. You're going to use those, so it's like an exercise in story writing. You're going to take just the circled stuff from your story, and you're going to turn this into a new story that's a tragedy. So if my story was, I got in a fight with my brother, he punched me in the face, he's the biggest jerk. Oh, can't use that anymore. We haven't talked in 6 months. I'm still very angry, whatever that looks like. And then we turn that into a tragedy, like Romeo and Juliet, right? Those kind of stories, like where, right? So it's a tragedy. Okay? So you're going to make a tragedy out of using the circled words. Ready, steady, go. Make it a tragedy. So it becomes a work of fiction, is what I'm saying. Okay, new sheet of paper. Same facts. Now, make it into a happy story, happy ending. It's a happy story. Same facts, turn it into a happy story. And some of the happiest stories started from a not happy story. So turn it into a happy story. Give it a happy ending. Make it resolve happily. Pens down. Sit up. All right, the next one is new sheet of paper. Make it into a science fiction story. Make it into a science fiction story. So now, same facts, make it into sci-fi. You may have to stretch your imagination a little bit. But here's the next thing you're going to do. You'll go back to your groups of 2, and you're going to alternate. You'll read one version of your story, the ones that you created, like that are fiction, and then the other person will read, and then you'll read your next one, and then the other person will read it. So you read through all of them to each other. And then after you've both read through, you can just share what's coming up for you through that process. But wait till you got through all the reading first. Okay? You got about 10 minutes, so about 5 minutes each. The reading part maybe shouldn't take no more than 3 or 4 minutes each, and then you'll have a little time to share with each other. Okay. Okay, welcome back. Whew. Who wants to share what came up? Maybe someone who hasn't shared. I know some of you, I can tell some of you are not happy with this exercise. Maybe one of you. Okay, Alexis, go ahead. I was thinking of you actually, but there's a couple.
I knew you were.
You weren't the only one, by the way. Just based on.
I wasn't
I don't think so.
unhappy with it per se. I had fun with the sci-fi the most, and the happy ending wasn't bad either. But I wanted you to maybe dive in a little bit more on when it is more fact-based and less like, oh, I had a disagreement with somebody. So I'll just real quick highlight, like, I had a business and I ended up having to walk away from it, like a business I started, and I poured my heart and soul into it. And that was one I left in there till you said, was it really a fact? And I was like, well, it was positive, but I guess technically that's an opinion. So I ended up walking away from it, and it's a more complex story, but it was 90% facts that I wrote down, but it just was a tragedy because I left it. And I think it's of course, if I flip the script, there's a lot of positivity that came from it. Like, I moved away, so I met my husband, I created this whole other career. Like, there's lots of good things that came from it, but in that moment in time, and when I still look back at it, it was a tragedy that I stepped down from that business, and I'll always miss parts of running it. So that was kind of, and I don't know if that's what you meant by came up for me, but I just wanted to kind of see what your thoughts were.
Yeah, I mean, I gathered that you know, it still feels like a tragedy. And I guess the question is it a tragedy?
I mean, I really enjoyed being an entrepreneur and I really enjoyed running the
Sure.
business, but I'm very grateful for what came of stepping down from it.
Yeah,
But
and
when,
moreover, I mean, Alexis, this is another question we have to ask ourselves is like, is it the end?
no, I mean, obviously there's new chapters being written that are just completely new stages in life. But when you wanted us to make it a tragedy, that's where I stuck because I was like, well, it still is a tragedy in its own chapter that I had to walk
Yeah.
away from it.
Yeah.
So maybe can you elaborate in a different
Well, let
way?
me ask you this. Could you tell a version of the story where it's just a stepping stone to your heroic journey to something else?
Yeah, it definitely set me apart when I went to get my next job.
Yeah. Well, I mean, okay, y'all let's see. Who know? Maybe may not work for everybody, but Star Wars. Seen Star Wars, like the original one?
Yeah,
Okay. Well, if you remember what happened in Star Wars, the thing that set Luke Skywalker off was what?
tragedy.
Well, was it a tragic? I mean, yeah, something bad happened, but is the story a tragic story?
Depends on which character you're asking, but not
Well,
for
let's just say it's Luke
tragedy.
Skywalker, right?
Yeah, no, a lot of good came out of his journey.
Yeah, so like if you looked at the Luke Skywalker story and you stopped it right after his aunt and uncle get killed, right? Then that would be really, first of all, we wouldn't want to watch it, right? But second of all, that would be like that, it would end in a tragedy, right? But that's not where the story stops, right? It's like the story keeps going because that thing is the thing that caused him to leave, that caused him to become who he was, that caused him, so it's kind of in how you decide to look at it in a way, or it can be. Do you see what I'm saying?
I do. I just when you I think I'm just hung up when you said, okay, write it as a tragedy. And I still had facts that were in the time
Yeah.
tragic to me. How do
Yeah.
guess I could tell what exercise you're trying to get me to go on, but I'm like,
Yeah.
I didn't want to make up new facts or unwrite the facts. I don't,
Yeah, it wasn't about unwriting the facts. It was about using those same facts and making it even more tragic, if you could imagine such a thing, right? Where, um,
so something really bad happened in the business and I had to step down because I hurt somebody or something.
where you killed her and you went to jail, and then you went to the electric chair.
Okay. That would
like,
have been much more tragic. Yes.
yeah. So like, what I'm saying is like, this is for everybody to see, is that the facts in and of themselves, when you just boil it to the facts, they often don't have any external meaning to them except for what we ascribe to it as part of a narrative that we like to follow, right? Because we as humans love stories. And we as humans like a clean beginning, a middle, and a clean ending. And we want it to all tie together in, linearly and, in the same vein and have the same sort of thing. And then the truth is, at least in my experience, is that life doesn't actually happen like that. Right? I mean, it's like things happen, but they only become a story when we start to tie it together. Because I bet if we talk to the person who you worked with or whatever, they may have a whole different meaning that they made of those same facts. How is that possible?
Is definitely possible.
Yeah, but how?
Well, I guess that's where you get into the opinion versus fact part of it.
Or
right?
even more. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely that, but it's also each person makes their own meaning in a way. And
Yeah.
what I want to, the power, it's different perspectives, exactly, Alex, but I think the power of it could be potentially that if you can make a meaning from something that happened, right? A tragic meaning, you could also make a new meaning. You can make a meaning that you choose. Right? You can make a meaning that makes it a hero's journey or a romance or right a happy ending, because there's power in that for all of us. I want you all to see this. There's power in seeing that I have made something mean something, but it's from that same set of facts. You could make a completely different meaning. And often, when we say there's two sides to something, it's not just two sides. There's a million ways that could be sliced. There might be even third-party people who saw whatever was happening and they made a whole other meaning. And usually it's like they make it a meaning about themselves. They could make it a meaning about you or about the other person, but generally like it's sort of a egocentric sort of meaning that we make of it, right? It's sort of this is what this means because it fits my narrative. And I'm not saying just to Alexis, we all do this. I do this. Absolutely, I do this. And so part of the exercise was kind of deconstructing the meaning that we made out of it and see that we could also make a whole bunch of other meanings, even silly ones, right? Like a sci-fi where aliens come in and zap our brains out or whatever, right? Okay, so let me ask you this. This is the follow-up. From here, speaking of that cue that we said not to do, but from here, like with this sort of through this lens, what do you think is possible for you, either from that story or from something else, or not from that story? What's possible for you from here?
Well, you learn a lot of lessons when you start a business and even walk away from one. So I've always known I wanted to start another one, but I don't know what it is yet.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not one I can't restart in the same industry I was working in before. So I think I know there's a lot of tools there, but I feel like I'm still in the very early parts of writing the chapter.
Sure. Of course. Yeah, it makes sense. And then, but what I hear is that you at least have the pen now.
Yeah.
Right? Like you as the author versus you as the sort of just, I just showed up and here's what's happening. Bang, 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 bang. Right? Like,
yeah.
Are you guys tracking with this? Can you kind of see like maybe in your own story, there's a little bit of something in it for you? Yes or no? And you shake your head, yes or no? Yeah. So let's dial it back a little bit. Thank you for sharing, Alexis. And you can share more in a minute. Okay. Often the meanings that we make from the things that happen go into a deeper narrative about who we are. And that narrative, we talked about it with Lenny, we talked about it a little bit. The narrative it's so deeply ingrained that we will take circumstances and make them fit into that narrative. Because we love a narrative, we love everything is going to fit with everything else. And often that story that we're carrying, the thing that we're making the other things that happen in our lives match, is a negative story about ourselves. So then we make that thing, whether it's Alexis's or your thing or your thing or your thing, we make that mean something about us, right? Like whatever happened in your business means something about you as a human, right? So let me see if I can give us let's go back to Alexis, if you don't mind. What are you making it mean about you?
Well, it definitely makes, the narrative is that I'm a quitter, or that there's definitely the failure side of that. And that was part of what I scratched out, was that I know in my head the logic behind we build on our failures and that they are successes, even though they sting.
Right.
But it's the feeling like I walked away from a job to move to Buenos Aires. Like there's been this theme where I feel like I'll just be getting into the meat of something, like, 3 years, 4 years in, you're just really getting into the meat. And then my life shifts. And my dad always called me like the jack of all trades when I was growing up because I have touched a lot of different things. And so I know there's some benefit to not sticking with something for 10 years and taking all these little different pieces and building something new. And I know I'm on some journey to build something, but when you don't see it or feel it, or you haven't been hit with that aha moment, you just kind of feel like you're floating.
Yeah. Let me ask you, Alexis, you said the word quitter.
Yeah.
Does it have a lot of energy for you?
Yeah.
Yeah. So do you remember a time like when you started deciding that that was a word for you? Like you're a quitter? Did someone call you a quitter or did you call yourself a quitter?
My mom just,
Ah,
she threw out like you're not sticking with anything. Like I would do a hobby or something and then I would switch to a new hobby, and she really wanted me to stick with something for a
mhm,
longer period of time. I don't know
mhm.
what that means exactly, but it was
Yeah.
clear
But did
that
she ever say the word quitter?
yeah.
Yeah. And so if I called you a quitter, how does that, like, does that have energy
Makes
for
me
you?
defensive.
Yeah. Yeah. And so this is the kind of stuff that we start to internalize, right? Like, I don't think you're a quitter. And just because something happened in your business to me does not make you a quitter. Like if you told me I quit this, walked away from this business, I would not make that mean something about you. But because of this thing, right? Wherever that went back to, however long ago that was, you might have started to tell yourself that a little bit, right? Like I'm a quitter, right? That's a lie. Like I'm a quitter is not true. You get that about you, right?
Yeah, I know it. It's like a different
Yeah.
exercise to make sure I feel it and believe it.
So I want you all to see yourselves in Alexis because we all do this on some level. Some of us, more, some of us maybe have it a little more than others, but we all do this. This is how we start to develop limiting beliefs. It usually starts really early. And it usually is like, we're little kids. And so then something happens, right? Somebody either like we experience something or somebody does something, and then it's not the thing so much, right? It's what we make it mean. It's what we make it mean is what really holds us back because um, you know for example, just for you, your mom calling you a quitter is not the worst thing that ever happened in the world, right? In the grand scheme of things.
Yeah.
But what you made it mean though is something maybe you've carried with you into different situations, including this one, like many years later. Now you're still sort of, do you see how that's still sort of coming up as sort of a pattern, right? Like not even the pattern of like, it might just be that variety is an important value for you because we all have the value of variety and some of us value it higher than others. Some of us more certainty, some of us are more interested in variety, but we all have both of those values, right? So, but if you make it mean that you're a quitter, then it can like start to be a limiting belief. Now suddenly, like I don't, not finishing something means that I'm a quitter, which means I'm never going to be this or I can't do that, et cetera, et cetera. Are you tracking?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you get it's a lie though, right?
Yes.
Okay. This is perfect right now. I want you all to see that like this is something we all do. Lenny modeled it earlier, right? Like, and so you're modeling it right now, but you're really representing everybody here. So I typed something out. I want you all to write this down. I just put it in the thing, and it's really the first step is identifying what the lie is, right? So if we want to eliminate a limiting belief, then we first have to identify what the limiting belief is. I think you just demonstrated, Alexis, that one of your limiting beliefs is that I am a quitter. Remember what we said about everything after I am, what? creates. Yeah. So for you, like as a starting point, it'd be the lie that I give up when you're ready to give it up is that I am a quitter. And there's usually something on the other side of that, still working with Alexis, that is sort of the opposite kind of a word, like that I'm not persistent, or I'm not determined, or I'm not whatever the other kind of flip side of that is. Like if I'm a quitter, that means I'm not what for you?
Not successful.
Okay, not successful. Yeah, does that have an energy? If like someone says you're not very successful, what would that feel like?
Defensive.
Yeah, it's usually even simpler than that. Like successful is almost kind of like a grown-up word, but as a kid, like when you're like maybe having this situation with your mom where this happens, it's more like I'm not good enough, or I'm not
That's
any good.
what was
Is that
coming up.
was that
Yeah.
not
That's
good
what-
enough?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I was
so
thinking it when you said it.
yeah. Okay, so this is good. So you're starting to kind of fill it in, and this takes time to sort of, it's kind of like panning, like you get the mud and then you start to sift it. And it's like, well, is the word, is the word quitter, or is it, what is it? So for all of us, it won't be so crystal clear right now, but you can start to get around, like start to get close to it, and we'll work with this. Then there's what's called a coping mechanism. It's like how we carry on in spite of this shows up for us. And we call that a command statement in this work, meaning it's the thing that you do to kind of get past that. So for a quitter, you might say, I quit. Like it's words or something you do generally, like when something tough comes up, it's your sort of exit strategy, or it's your defense mechanism. It can show up like as a, F you. It could show up as a I quit. Like, by the way, that's one of mine is I say I quit. Like, because it's a way for me to get out of the situation. And it comes from like fight or flight sort of, or freeze kind of energy behind it. But it's a command statement. And it's the thing that you say, like when there's a difficulty. Do you know what yours might be?
Well, when I think coping mechanism, I think of the way that I respond. So like I would overachieve to compensate for that. But what I'm hearing you say is more what made me walk away from these, or like
No,
when I hit adversity.
I think you're onto it. It could be something like I'll overachieve, because like one of the energy behind overachieving is I'll show you.
Yeah.
Right? Like something like that. Like you tell me, what do you say inside, or what do you say to other people when they, like when you start to feel that like I'm kind of getting judged, that I'm a quitter, or that I'm not doing something very good? What comes up?
I've been noticing that people, first of all, people tell me I'm successful. Like no one even says that I'm a quitter anymore to me. Like I read into sentences and I get insecure and defensive. So like we moved for my husband's job. So when all the attention was on his career, it was like I felt myself getting like, well, I bring value. Like I wanted to find ways to, like I didn't want to make it about me, but I felt this need to validate. And I felt this need to like, well, I'll do this, or I don't, and it's so new still, so it's very raw, this latest one, which was not what I wrote about, but I see the pattern that's arisen. And so I get I think I'm kind of tapping into it, but it's just this need to validate. And so it's shown in either overachieving or.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. Let me back it up a little bit. If you're having an argument with your mom and suddenly you're starting to like get really frustrated, how would you respond to that, to your mom? Like maybe there's a thing you always say, or a way that you always do. Like my daughter says, whatever, and then walks out. That's her thing. She says, whatever, and the other one says, I hate you. Like that's her thing. Like they both have this thing that they pretty much always do when they get triggered. And that's like what the reason why I want you to start to get clear on it, all of you, is because when you start to go into that old story, that lie about who you are, that limiting belief, this thing will come up as a signal. Oh, I just said the thing. Like I just said the thing. That means I'm like operating right this minute from this thing. And that's when you get aware of that, that's when you suddenly get to pick up the pen again and say, hold on. You know? So that's why it's important for everybody to kind of say, like, what is the thing that I say or do? And by the way, if you don't know, ask someone really close to you. What do I always do when we have a fight? Because they know, right? Because you've been wearing it on some level, like this sign on your head, right? With people that you know, but yeah, it's not evident to you, but like the other people are like, oh, that's the place I don't want to go, because then she'll say that. Do you know what that is? Did your husband say, oh, you always say that?
No, he's way better about all those. He doesn't do those sins. He's really just, he'll just be like, okay, maybe we shouldn't talk about this anymore. You know, he's the calm, and I'm like, you sure? Let's talk about it. But
Yeah.
I noticed, I think it's definitely subconscious. I mean, that day, even just on the mat with the wrist thing that I sent in a private message because I didn't want to distract from the class flow. And you guys were like, okay, let's talk about it. So even then, like when you and Albina were pointing out just the words I was using that were already, oh, I'm not successful, or I'm going to hold back the class, or that kind of energy. Like once you said it, it was like, okay, now I can see it. But I have a feeling that I'm thinking of all the different ways I react. So if I'm in a really at my wit's end and it's the straw that broke the camel's back, I might explode. Like I have screamed at her before. Or I try to take a deep breath and just end the conversation. So
Yeah.
I try to
Well,
just,
this is coming, you know, usually your command statement comes from your less evolved self. So if you scream at her, what do you say? That's really the question.
See, I'm seeing red, so I'm definitely not using my more evolved. But
That's okay, because you want to see both. You want to see like how you show up when you're like kind of unconscious, and then when you.
I feel like it's almost too big to unpack here, but long story short, my stepfather is kind of the biggest trigger she has for me at this point. So she'll bring up things like, why don't you call him? And it's like, well, it's not my job to maintain the whole relationship. And so that's the trigger that I have screamed at her about. And it'll be like, you know, it's not my job to carry these relationships. And so there's something there. I just don't know.
Yeah.
If it's on the same wavelength, I'm sure there it is at a more root level.
Well, you get to play with these. So this is, you don't have to have the answer right now, but you get to play with these. Like I'm sensing it's something around, I'll show you.
Yeah.
Or like, oh yeah, like, you know, something like that. Cause there's kind of like a, you know, anger is kind of like a fuck you energy, you know, like I will show you, whatever that looks like, right?
It's protective too. It's like
protective, but it's also a little bit lashing, right? Kind of like,
yeah.
Right. So it's something in that. You get to play with that. And when you hear it, you might hear it come out of your mouth sometime. You're like, oh, wow, I say that. That's it. That's the thing.
Yeah.
And you might even go ask your husband, like, what do I say when I feel really triggered and defensive? What's the thing that you hear me say? And he might just like right off the top of his head go, oh, you say that. That could be it. So good. You're really tuned in. Like, here's where I'm coming, like from this old story about, you know, I'm a quitter and I'm not good enough. And then I get defensive and I'll get angry and I'll lash out at people. So now that's aware, you're sort of aware of it. This is a time when you're aware is that you get to make a choice. Like, if I weren't coming from that limiting belief, how would I want to be? What's a new way of being for you?
Confident and like self-validating. Like I don't need to prove anything to anybody. More importantly, I need to prove anything to myself.
Yeah. Well, actually, I'm sorry. The new way of being can be two I ams, and it doesn't even have to have a not. You didn't. That second one doesn't have to have a not. So my new way of being. Sorry. I think I messed this new way of being. So I'm going to rewrite that part. My new way of being is of, and this is where you get to be the creator. And that is who I am. So for you, it could be like confidence and greatness or something, you know, like what's the opposite sort of not good enough is great or is right. Like, and so you get to like, you know what it's like it's like you had an old software program, or for some of us, maybe this, if you're more like my age, you had an old cassette tape, right? That you listened to over and over, and it would say, you're not good enough, you're a quitter, you're not good enough, you're a quitter, you're not good enough, you're a quitter. It's just sitting there kind of playing deep down the background, like just quietly, like subconsciously, right? Like those, what they used to call that, where they would, subliminal messages kind of in there. And now you get to go, and when you see that coming up, you get to record over it, you know, press play and record or whatever. And then you get to write something new that you want to hear in the background. That's like who you really are. Because if you've told yourself, remember, this is a lie. So if you've been telling yourself a lie all this time, then you can tell yourself a new story, right? You get to choose it. Like, oh, I'm choosing this and I'm choosing that. So what are the things, like if you, Alexis, everybody take a deep breath. If you, Alexis, are choosing from right now, my new way of being is of what and what?
My new way of being is, the of is throwing me off. It's something to do with, I don't need validation from the outside world.
So what's a simple way to say that? Self-love, maybe? Self-worth?
Belief,
Self-belief?
something like that.
My new way of being is believing in myself, something like that. You pick the words.
My new way of being is,
You said confidence. That's a good one.
the reason that didn't resonate right is people describe me as confident all the time. So there's this
It doesn't-
outward confidence that, like, I know I'm confident, like I can speak in rooms of 100 people. Like I raise my hand at conferences. It's not confidence. It's a question. Yeah, self-assured, maybe. Like I don't want to question myself, or, oh, someone didn't text me back, so maybe they're mad at me, or like the thing that starts to, the outside world influence.
So if you, okay, so this is good. So you get to be the doctor right now.
Yeah.
What prescription, like a word that would sort of just eliminate all of that?
Well, I come back to that, I'm good enough.
Yeah, my new way of being is of being good enough, is of greatness. I mean, why not? Why stop at good enough? Why not be great? Greatness? Well, I mean, you have to pick a word that has energy for you.
I like greatness. Powerful.
Powerful is a power. My new way of being is a power. Do you like that?
Yeah, I like that.
Power. Okay, what else? You're at the buffet table now. So you pick up some power. That feels good. What else?
I'm struggling to find the right word for, I don't want to search for validation from anyone but me.
Start from what you do want, not from what you don't want.
I feel like there's a positive word on the other side of that coin.
You know the word that's coming up for me? Inner strength.
Yes, I like that one. So my new way of being is powerful and filled with inner strength.
Yeah, so my new way of being is of power and inner strength, or inner strength and power. How's that feel?
That feels good. That feels good. Yeah.
Okay, well, see, you get to play with them over time, because you want to choose words that like really get you psyched, so that's like, oh, and then the last part is, and that is who I am.
Okay.
So do you want to try this on?
Yeah.
We'll forget this command statement for right now. Don't worry about that.
Okay.
So here's what we'll do. I'm going to write it down so I can help you. But it's like this. The lie that I give up is that I am a quitter and that I am not good enough. Right?
Yes. That resonates.
My new way of being is of inner strength and power. And that is who I am.
I like that.
Gonna try that on?
Yeah. Should I have written it down though so that I can read it, or
No,
I can
'cause you don't need to read it. You're just gonna feel it. Stand up.
Okay.
Stand up so we can see you. If you can put that down so you can stand in like a power stance, like Tadasana or something, so that we can see. You might have to step back a little bit. There you go. And then full on like Tadasana energy. Yeah, and then hands by your side, open up. There you go. Like let your hands come down. Yeah, there you go. You can do that. Do that. I like that.
Power.
Yes. So the lie that I give up
The lie that I give up is
is
that
that,
I'm
keep
that I'm
going.
not good enough, and that I'm a quitter.
Yes. My new way of being.
My new way of being is that I am filled with inner strength and power.
Yes. And that is who I am.
And that is who I am.
Yeah. Now do it with even more enthusiasm so that like it comes from inner strength and power. Do it as if you're embodying inner strength and power. The lie that I give up is that I'm a quitter and I'm not good enough.
The lie
So do
that
that
I
like,
give up is that I am a quitter and that I'm not good enough.
my new way of being. Now really embody it.
My new way of being is that I'm filled with inner strength and power. And that is who I am.
Yes. Now do it again, just from the new way of being.
My new way of being is that I am filled with inner strength and power, and that is who I am.
Come a little closer to the camera and now like bang, like really big. Now step back just a little and then like full self-expression.
My new way of being is that I am filled with inner strength and power, and that is who I am.
Yes, one more time.
My new way of being is that I am filled with inner strength and power, and that is who I am.
Yes. How do you feel right now?
I feel good.
Good?
I feel powerful.
Yes.
Lunges.
Yes. Okay, come have a seat.
All right.
So here's how this works. What are you guys tracking? You seeing that? You see the shift that's happening in her? First of all, you're not mad anymore. But it's like this. You'll see this old way of being coming up in your life. And when you get really tuned to it, you'll be like, oh, I'm operating from this. And your command statement, the thing that you say, is a good clue. Sometimes your body will start to do stuff before you would come out of your mouth, but the things that come out, you either say to yourself or you say to others, is a good clue that you're operating from this old tape. And in that moment, this is where you get to do formula for change. Take a breath, hit eject on that tape, flip it over, and then wait a minute. That's not who I am. That's a lie. I give that lie up right now. My new way of being is of inner strength and power, and that's who I am. That's going to feel differently. That's going to have you interact with other people completely differently. It's going to impact your relationships completely differently. My hair's standing up on end because I'm getting excited. You see that? I don't know if you can see it, but it's all like goosebumps. We all do this. We all do this. We all subconsciously, and some of us more so than others, but all of us on some level operate from some old story that we just call it a lie. A story that's not true is called a lie. And to identify the lie that we tell ourselves, there's usually like some fundamental thing that happens, some fundamental lie. And it's great. Like when I first heard this, I was very upset because I was like, you mean I've been, like limiting myself and doing all the frustration and the sadness and the anger and the pain and suffering that I've had in my life, I've been doing to myself. I was so upset. But then I was like, oh, that's actually good. That's the good news, is that like, once I see that, like I can do something about it. Because if I'm the one who put myself in this box, this limiting belief, this prison, whatever you want to call that, then I also have the key to reach in and open it up. And it's choosing a new way of being is really a key to that. Is to say, that's not even who I am. That's some story I told myself based on some shit my mom said, but that's not really who I am. Who I really am is of self-confidence, inner strength and power. Mine's love and connection, but whatever, like you get to pick it. You get to pick it because it's usually the antidote is in the new I am, the new way of being. So here's what I want you to do right now before we wrap up this part is I want you to make sure that you wrote that down, and I want you to fill in the blanks for yourself. So that thing is, and you got to edit, because I wrote my new way of being is that I am. It's really my new way of being. It can be I am self, or it could be I am, or it could be my new way of being is of inner strength and power. And that is who I am. So I want you now it may take you a few edits. You might have to scratch through like, well, that's not really the word. The words need to have energy for you. And you'll know, because when that word comes up, you'll be like, dang, I feel like a tingle inside. If I told Alexis that she was not successful, she wouldn't feel anything probably, because, she already knows that she is successful. But if I called her a quitter, right? If I was like trying to hurt her, I would call her a quitter, because she'd be thinking about that for like years, right? Am I wrong? Right.
Yeah.
So it's that kind of a thing. It's that kind of a thing. So like if somebody told me I was stupid, I'd be like, whatever, because that doesn't have any energy for me. But if somebody told me, what's the one? I don't know, something like, you're not very lovable, or like you're not very likable, or something like that, that would hurt more, because that's closer to the lie. The closer that it gets to the target, the more it hurts. So, and then on the same other end of the spectrum, choosing words for you that feel like amazing and beautiful and have energy for you, that you get to pluck down like apples, right? And like close to your heart, so that you can remember, like, that's really who I am when things are kind of hitting the fan. Okay, so fill those in right now. You got a couple minutes.